President Trump, engaging in the sort of direct negotiation that his predecessors shunned, bet that his self-described skills as a master negotiator would make all the difference. They did not. Hanoi, Vietnam. Over the past quarter-century, 3 American presidents have tried cajoling, threatening and sabotaging North Korea's efforts to build a nuclear arsenal. Eventually each turned to negotiations, convinced that an isolated, broken country would surely choose economic benefits for its starving populace over the bomb. President Trump was the fourth to test that proposition, but with a twist. Engaging in the sort of direct talks that his predecessors shunned, the president traveled 8,000 miles for his second summit meeting in less than a year with Kim Jong-un, the North Korean leader, betting that his self-described skills as a master negotiator would make all the difference. As it turned out, it didn't. The meeting in Vietnam ended in shambles on Thursday when Mr. Kim insisted on a full lifting of sanctions, according to Mr. Trump, and would not agree to dismantle enough of his nuclear program to satisfy American demands. The North Koreans later said they had demanded only a partial lifting of sanctions, but confirmed they had offered to dismantle their main nuclear site, at Yongbyon. The split underscored the risk of leader-to-leader diplomacy. When it fails, there are few places to go, no higher-up to step in and cut a compromise that saves the deal. In this case, the price may be high, especially if Mr. Kim responds to the failure by further accelerating his production of nuclear fuel and a frustrated Mr. Trump swings from his expressions of love for the North Korean dictator and back to the fire and fury language of early in his presidency. No deal is better than a bad deal, and the president was right to walk, said Richard Haass, the president of the Council on Foreign Relations, but this should not have happened, he said. A busted summit is the risk you run when too much faith is placed in personal relations with a leader like Kim, when the summit is inadequately prepared, and when the president had signaled he was confident of success. The outcome on Thursday took everyone by surprise. Mr. Trump was so convinced a deal was in the offing that the White House had announced that a signing ceremony would be held immediately after a warm lunch between the two leaders. But no one ever sat down at the elegantly set table in the century-old Metropole Hotel, and there was no signing ceremony because there was no communique to sign. For his part, Mr. Kim seemed to think he had Mr. Trump exactly where he wanted him, desperate for a deal, and in need of a headline-making victory after the devastating testimony on Monday of Michael D. Cohen, Mr. Trump's former lawyer and fixer. If so, Mr. Kim clearly miscalculated. Trump could have had a small deal, Joseph Yun, the former State Department's special envoy for North Korea, said after the collapse on Thursday. Close a few sites, and lift a few sanctions. But because of Cohen, the president needed a big deal, one that traded sanctions relief for a formal peace declaration, and the mass dismantlement of nuclear infrastructure that it took the North Koreans the better part of 40 years to construct. In the short run, the damage from the failed meeting is likely to be considerable, and not just to Mr. Trump's dreams of a Nobel Peace Prize, which he asked Japan's Prime Minister, Shinzo Abe, to nominate him for. The risk now is that having placed their personal imprimatur on the negotiations, Mr. Trump and Mr. Kim will be tempted to raise the pressure on each other. That could herald a new era of nuclear tensions, at a moment when a major arms control deal with Russia has been declared dead, when India and Pakistan are once again reminding the world of the risks when two nuclear-armed states start skirmishing, and when Iran is weighing restarting its nuclear fuel production. History suggests that the North Koreans may try to pressure Mr. Trump by escalating. And they have the opportunity. Mr. Trump not only left Hanoi early, but he also left without any agreement for a freeze on continued North Korean production of nuclear material. That means that the world's fastest-growing nuclear arsenal will continue to increase in size as negotiations drag on. In retrospect, there were warning signs that things were going south, when Secretary of State Mike Pompeo went to Pyongyang to turn a vaguely worded agreement to pursue denuclearization struck at the June meeting in Singapore into reality. Mr. Kim declined to see him. When he returned, he got an audience, but no inventory of North Korea's nuclear weapons, its production facilities and its missiles. Without that, there was no way for the two sides to agree on a timetable for dismantlement. For months, the North declined to deal with the State Department's special envoy, Stephen Biegun. And when the North Koreans did, they explored many options, but made clear sanctions relief had to come first. Mr. Trump made his own situation worse. He kept repeating that there was plenty of time to reach an agreement, taking all the urgency out of the issue. When the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal reported on satellite evidence and expert analysis suggesting that the North was still producing nuclear material and expanding missile bases, Mr. Trump said on Twitter that there was no news in those reports. He blamed the media for making a big deal of it, rather than having used the moment to remind the North Koreans that its activities were being intensely monitored, and not just by spy satellites. And on Wednesday night, when the two men met again at the Metropole, it was clear from the body language that something had changed since their first warm embrace in Singapore 8 months ago. Mr. Trump, who said over the weekend that he would be happy just to have a continued ban on missile and nuclear testing, realized that if he acceded to Mr. Kim's demand for an end to sanctions, he would lose whatever leverage the United States possessed. "I'd much rather do it right than do it fast," the president told reporters before leaving Hanoi early. One of the most telling obstacles in the negotiations was over a facility called Kangsun, which the North Koreans have never publicly acknowledged. Detected by American intelligence agencies nearly a decade ago, the site, in a suburb of the capital, Pyongyang, is believed to be a secret nuclear enrichment plant.